When it comes to metal detecting for old coins and relics, being able to recognize old places is crucial. And being able to put a time frame to these places will allow you to decipher what it is you're going to most likely dig out of the ground. For instance, if I wanted to find an 1800s coin, I wouldn't be metal detecting on a 1900s property. But how do I recognize the difference between the two properties? How do I know for sure what is 1800s and 1900s? And we'll talk about a couple basic ways to decipher the age of a property. One of the things that I like to do is I use building construction. If there's a building still on that property, we can easily identify the time frame of items that you would expect to find based on that building's building construction. And I discuss building construction techniques mostly in North America because that's what I'm used to. So in order to do this properly, you have to look at your area that you live in and look at the techniques that were used when people built houses and other places. So that way you can look at these structures and get an idea of how old they are. I personally prefer to find locations that used to have structures on them that, by looking at today, leave no evidence that there was ever something there. The only way that you know something was there is because you did your homework. Those are the places I like to find, because when you find old structures that are still standing, it draws attention from people like me that like to metal detect. And the chances are that even if you gain permission on that old property, it's probably been detected before, and your odds of finding cool coins and relics are drastically decreased then because it's already been hit by other people. So, how do you locate where something used to be? That's where research comes in. The research technique that I typically use is internet-based, and I like to try and find old maps of the area that I'm interested in. And on these old maps, usually buildings and structures were marked. Using a digitized copy of these old maps, and by digitizing I mean you could just take a picture of it or scan it or somehow get it digitized and put it into your computer. After you've digitized the historic map, open up Google Earth and overlay that image to the area that you're interested in, and try and stretch the corners so that old roads match up with current existing roads. And I like to use rivers and mountains because those are stationary. They typically don't change a whole lot over the course of time. So how do you find old maps? Well, old maps are usually digitized and then put into some sort of catalog on a website. So you're going to have to do some researching on what websites are going to work best for your area. My area that I like to use, I use historicmapworks.com, and I'm sure that there's others for your geographical location. Once we've discovered these old locations, we can't just go straight to them. We have to find out who owns them. It's imperative that we get proper permissions before we go out and metal detect anywhere. There's a few different ways to go about finding who owns a particular property. Your county assessor should have the records on file. Once you have the name, it's as simple as Google search in that area and then finding out what their phone number is or a physical address, a door that you can knock. That's kind of the long way to do it though. The county assessors can be slow. Sometimes you have to pay to get in there. Maybe they're only open from 3 to 5 o'clock on every other Thursday. Sometimes you run into problems like that. One of the more convenient ways that I personally like to use here in North America is a website called Report All USA, and it's a Google Earth overlay that shows property divisions and who owns the property. Once I find the name of the property owner, I just Google their name and the county that I suspect that they live in, and usually that will generate a phone number or an address to where I can seek that person out and ask permission. If the property isn't privately owned and it's owned by a government agency, you'll have to become very familiar with your government's rules and regulations as it applies to metal detecting. For a more in-depth look at how to recognize old places, check out my book, The Metal Detecting Bible. Thanks for watching.